Good afternoon, everyone. Mary Sloan with another episode of Inspirational Influencer News, People Making a Difference. And I am thrilled and excited this afternoon to be talking with Chip Rome. Chip has been in the theater education business for a very long time. Someone who absolutely loves the theater and knows what it takes to get there. And it is not easy. And having been in and out of training on this and gone into corporate work, he's come back to what he loves, which is working with teenagers in camps, schools, and various programs so that he can actually help them figure out how to get past the process of getting through those dreaded, what is it called?
Auditions.
Auditions. That's what it is. The audition, the one thing that everybody fears the most. And yet they haven't, according to Chip, found a better way of doing it. So auditions are going to be with us for the foreseeable future. And isn't it wonderful that somebody like Chip can be out there helping teenagers of today get a foot on the doorstep to stardom. And he's currently offering an online program to coach students in the art of auditioning. And I want to say on behalf of the students, because as somebody who likes going to the theater, I'm glad that it's going to keep going, because without actors, we wouldn't have a theater. And going through those auditions are a necessary evil. So I'm so glad you do what you do. But what would you really like the audience to know about what you can do for youngsters? Because that's who you're currently looking to help. And I'm sure many of us have grandchildren or children, depending on our age range, who would be interested. So what do you want them to know about what it is that you do, Chip?
Well, and thanks for having me on your show, Mary. I really appreciate it. The thing that distinguishes kid actors from the professionals, from the adults, is that theater is really two separate things. There's the product, that's the show that the audience sees. But there's also the process, what everyone goes through to get to that opening night. And especially for kids who are so emotionally sensitive, drama queen or not, that process is a whole other animal. And even for auditions, what distinguishes the professionals from the educational situation is that the professionals, if they don't get a part, they go away, they try somewhere else. The kids, if they don't get cast, they still see everybody who did in class after class throughout the day. And so it can be very tough. And even if they do get exactly what they want, they have to be careful not to show it off to the point of causing conflict with their peers. So it can be the process versus the product are worthy of equal attention.
That's really interesting, and not something that, of course, came to my mind instantly, not being in the educational sphere anymore, and not really thinking about the challenges. And of course, we all know teens, although they often display a lot of bravado, they're all a little concerned about, am I really making it? Is this going to be okay? Am I getting to be a human being? Am I getting to make it into the adult world? So, I mean, it is a time where for most of them, they're not really totally 100% confident. So to not get a part, it must be very hard to help them not dwell on that and see that there's another part or something available to them.
Well, there are a couple of things. One is that when students don't get casts, They sometimes, I encourage them to come talk with me about it. Have taken notes along the way and happy to share what I saw, what I didn't see. But their perspective is often, what did I do wrong? Or what's wrong with me that I didn't get cast? And it's not about that at all. So to separate out the fragile ego from the objective criteria necessary to move someone into a particular slot can be a tricky conversation to have. The other thing that comes to mind is that kids want, everyone wants to play Annie in Annie, as opposed to all the other orphan children that have to be in the show or you got no show. So having a sense of the value of the ensemble and working together as a very satisfying experience is an important principle to encourage. My son, who I guess got the DNA, was very successful in his high school acting career, as it were, and said that he didn't prefer to play a lead. He liked to be in the chorus because the socializing was so much better. You got more chance to be off stage with your friends and still be part of the whole thing. And so he really liked that, and I applaud him for that attitude.
Well, I mean, you're right. There's the quote unquote stars and there's everybody else, but without everybody else, there's no stars and there's no show. So everybody has a very critical part, from, the people who come in and feed the cast and keep them going during long days of working at it.
Praise to the drama mamas and drama dads.
Yeah, no kidding. I mean, it's not easy. I live in a city where we do a lot of theater and a lot of theater productions, and you watch these things come into sites, and I mean, there's trucks and trailers and this and that and all this other stuff. So I have some vague idea that it's not easy. It's not like, oh, well, we'll just set up over here and we'll do this and it'll be all wonderful.
And in educational theater, there are additional obstacles to deal with. Many schools don't have a dedicated theater space. There are gymnatoriums and cafetoriums as auditoriums, where you've got the basketball team rehearsing and you're behind the curtain on what's left of the stage that's built in, and it's difficult. Or the orchestra and band and chorus are sharing the space.
Oh my gosh.
And so you only get a little bit of time in the actual space you're going to be performing. And the rest of the time you're kind of squeezing in wherever you can, whether it's hallways or classrooms or whatever.
Wow. You're beginning to have me really appreciate what it takes to become an actor or actress. Wow.
I think that actors, as they develop, are able to be terrific problem solvers and critical thinkers. As with other artists, actors start working with incomplete information and have to develop that into something very specific and on a deadline, when that show is going to open. That show's got to be ready to open. And that means it's quite a trial to make sure you have the skill set to keep moving forward creatively and collaboratively, so that you can have the work be complete by the time that curtain goes up.
Wow. That's really, and live shows too don't have the advantage of having somebody who can coach you on lines while you're going on, or just before or just after, because you're carrying huge swaths of a story that you have to have kind of put yourself into that character enough that you can carry it and not get those lines so screwed up that the person who's coming after you and has something to say no longer knows what to say.
Well, in an audition, one of the things that I want to get my students past is to understand that an audition or delivering a monologue at an audition is not a demonstration of how well you can remember words. Because we rehearse about an hour for every minute of performance. So a full-length show is like 120 hours. You're going to remember the lines by then. The question is, can you get the necessity of what that character desperately wants communicated? Not just the words that some playwright wrote to express that, but the feeling and the drive. And one of the advantages that I teach is that if you're nervous going into an audition, which is everyone, the audience can't, or the casting group can't tell the difference between actor nervousness and character anxiety to get what they want. So those nerves can really serve you well. What did you just mention? Having a big role. Nope, I've lost that thought.
Well, I mean, it's sort of like I had to memorize silly, for just a video reel that was a grand total of a minute long. And I have a really good memory and have always memorized really super easily. But to get that memorized in that appropriate time space, and then give my director, who was fantastic, I got to work with Gary Rogers, who had worked with some of the very best. And his comment is, well, I've coached Moses, so I think you'll be okay. But, I mean, just to get to the point where he could actually coach me in delivery, it was quite a deal, like it really gave me a whole new appreciation for what it takes to be out there on stage being a character.
I talk about learning lines as being like climbing a ladder. You can get up a couple of steps, and that's remembering the words, but that doesn't get you to the top of the ladder. You need to keep working till you can get those lines when you're tremendously distracted and still not missing a beat. Because when you come into rehearsal, there's going to be costumes that were never there before, or props that you never had to use before, or suddenly there are lights coming at you, and let alone an audience in front of you. So the obstacles keep increasing, and you need your own comfort level to be very secure so that you can handle those new things. Not to mention all the surprises. Somebody drops something, someone forgets to bring something on. I take my actors through a scene twice, and then they're off book. They don't get to use their script. They can call for lines. And then about 2 weeks before we go up, they can't call for lines anymore. They have to take care of each other and ad lib, to improvise a dialogue to keep things on track. And as a result, they can handle pretty much anything.
That's amazing. And that's great coaching, because that's a hard thing to do. I mean, I just realized, like I said, my big 1 minute script. And I'm thinking, holy smokes, these people have to be able to be accurate enough that the person coming after them knows what they can say. It's got to be close enough.
And even more so in a musical, because the live orchestra has only a few words to tell them it's time to start that number. And if you're kind of getting the idea straight, you're not necessarily providing those words they're waiting for, so that you can finish your idea and expect the song, and
they haven't started yet.
Right. And the conductor's there looking, waiting, listening. So yes, the actors don't get to make up what the playwright has set down. They need to interpret specific words and deliver them well, but as written, unless the show is improvisational, and then you have a whole other kettle of fish.
Well, yeah, I mean, I did a little bit of improv. It was quite challenging. I mean, you're being asked to do all kinds of strange things that, like, really? Ah.
Well, and the idea there is that no matter what happens, you say yes, and you can take it even further or take it in a different direction. But whatever happens, you go with it and treat it like it's a terrific idea, because supporting each other is much more important in improv, on stage, in life, than your own what's in it for me.
Well, I mean, what great life learning for people who do. I mean, this is brilliant training for, going into life, because really we're all kind of actors in one another's plays, and we're all kind of, the props and the support and everything else. And to get that, we are interdependent, I think that's the right word, and really connected is huge learning.
Yes, indeed. I'm having a hard time focusing on this.
Just getting the right words to come. Well, I mean, it's just always confounding when other people don't do what you expect them to do. And it's like, okay, now where am I? Whereas actors get to not only have to deal with that occasionally, like, what lines did they just say? What am I supposed to respond? But they can't let anybody see that they're confounded. They gotta look like, oh, this is just normal. This is perfect. I know. And they have to bring it back on track somehow.
Yeah.
That's, so I mean, knowing how to improv is probably one of the best skills that you can learn. And, even if you ever want to give a speech, like I was just, on in a group where we were talking about speeches we should give or might want to give, or what kinds of things did we want to say to get and on a stage in order to give it. And I'm like, oh my, that's another whole thing to think about, like, oh, now I'm going to talk for 20 minutes about what I do. Or in some of these instances, you've got 22 minutes to the second. And really, like, okay, 22 minutes to the second, and then I'm going to get cut off. Okay, let's try not to be mid-sentence.
Improv is tremendously helpful for anyone, I think, to help you feel more comfortable talking off the top of your head and staying focused on an idea and moving it forward. I wanted to mention that one of the, WIFM, what's in it for me, especially I'm aware of for student actors, they come in desperately wanting the part. They want to get cast. I should be cast because I want it so much. Boy, would that lead to some crazy cast lists. What they have a much harder time with is the director's perspective. Now, the director's also thinking, what's in it for me? But in this case, it's which person that I'm seeing fits the characters that are in the script. And it's really about character matching, not rewarding a student who's dedicated or even rewarding someone who's talented. You can be very talented and not be a good fit. The young man who was the most talented singer I ever worked with was with me when we did the play Pippin. He was very talented, dedicated, nice guy, worked hard, but he could not have the lead. He couldn't, because he was kind of a big guy with a lovely deep voice. And Pippin, the lead, is a little schmo. He's the king's son. He has no idea where he's going with his life. He has to sing a tenor, a much higher range. And bless his heart, good old Tim, he was our king. He fit physically, he had the voice, he had the presence, perhaps for the part he didn't want, but it was the right fit. And a much smaller, younger kid, more anxious, like the character is anxious since he can't find his way in the world, that's the right fit for that part. So the ability to know thyself is pretty darn important if you're going to go into the casting process realistically.
Well, and accepting yourself, because, you know, you not only have to know yourself, but you kind of go, okay, I'm a really good actor or actress, but really I can't, you know, kind of suddenly force myself into this role. That's not going to work out well.
Yeah.
You know,
I
like a
describe
male who
kids as
wants to
being
be
like,
a female.
well, as a matter of fact, when we did Hairspray, which was a show for which we won the Cappy, which is like the Tony Awards for high school kids, for Best Musical, we did not have an actor to play the sort of big mama role. It had to be African American, and there just wasn't someone who could sing the part and pull it off. But we did have a guy who was African American, who had a lovely voice. And we thought, well, Hairspray is a role where the sort of about the blacks and the whites, and the white mother is typically played by a guy. So this would provide a kind of parallel, but he
Oh, cool.
wasn't at all sure that he wanted to undertake her role. Decided, okay, if that's where they want me, I will help out. Struggled along. And then about a week before we opened, he finally had the whole hair and makeup and the costume and the nails. And he decided to go for it and commit to that role and play it the way the script and the ideas and the characters and the conflicts were driving it, rather than worrying about himself. And the cast was thrilled. And so he bought into it. He kept that. We were nominated for Best Musical, which meant he got to perform a scene on the stage at the awards gala, which is 2,500 sold out seats in the John F. Kennedy Center in Washington, D.C.
Wow.
Televised, a big deal. And he did such a terrific job with that number. He had a standing ovation in the middle of this awards gala, which doesn't happen. And, you know, as a director, that was a great moment for everyone. That was a great moment because he made his mind, he gave himself permission to go where he needed to go, and it paid off.
Isn't that wonderful? What a great story.
Yeah.
I mean, really, you know, to finally accept, this is my role. I can do this. And I need to be that person because I'm now acting, it's not about me. It's about who I need to present myself as. Wow.
Absolutely.
I can see how amazing that career that you've had with young people and leading them through this, and then getting them through, that dreaded audition where, oh my God, what if I don't get cast? You know, well, you know, what's next? Or is there another role there that's better for you, or whatever, right?
There are several ways an audition can work out. An audition is usually followed by a callback. So the audition is, here's who I am, here's what I sound like, here's what I look like. The callback is when you're reading from the script or doing a song from the show, and being matched with, you know, with other characters you might work with. You know, the really tall girl and the really short guy tends to read as funny. I mean, it exists in real life, but when you've only got a few moments to introduce a person to an audience and only a couple of hours to tell the whole story, you kind of depend on a shorthand. So that can vary. I'm having a time this morning.
You know, but I mean, I can see that just the challenges that you run into when you're auditioning, and of course you want that call back, but then what if you get a call back and you don't want to be the part that they're calling you back to do? That wasn't what was in your imagination, and all of a sudden it's like, well, just a minute. I really wanted to audition for this. Well, you don't fit that role. You fit this role.
That's
You know,
true.
for kids, it's got to be hard to see that as okay and as praise that they at least got to the point where they could be part of a show. And from there, now be the best at that part that you can be. And somebody will say, wow, they were really great there. Maybe they can do
And
something
you
else.
can really make your mark with the smallest of roles. I mean, if you are really there, you know, taking in what's happening to the other characters, you are really bringing the audience along with you in a way that gives a whole context to what those lead characters are saying. Some people don't get it that the villain is much, much more fun to play than the hero. Those are great roles. Those any supporting character can be tremendously satisfying, even if it's not at the very top of the cast list, or being cast as an understudy. Sometimes we had a situation where our lead went into a diabetic seizure in the middle of a performance.
Oh my gosh.
And we managed to get him off stage and call an early intermission. And while we were attending to him, we did have an understudy. We sprayed his hair black like the original guys, put him in the costume. He went on and the show continued.
Wow.
By the time the intermission would have come, the first kid was recovered, swapped back in. And people who didn't know the actors, you know, the family and friends, said they didn't know why she took her curtain call with 2 male leads. That was a crazy experience. But I never had any problems with having kids understudy for years after that. It's like, oh, I only got the understudy. Oh, I only may save the day. And we look what's happening with Broadway now with COVID. So many swings and understudies are getting their moment and keeping the shows running, where, you know, if the leads go down out, to cancel a show is very tough. So those understudy roles expensive. Have huge value. And kids don't get that easily. Or to be part of the show on the technical side, if you don't get cast, it's one big family and you're all moving toward the same goal at the same time. If nobody wants to be the curtain puller and the curtain never opens, you're not going to see the play. I mean, one of the things I love about doing theater is there is a place for everyone,
Yeah, well, I've been to enough small theater productions to know that oftentimes they'll come out and say, we could really use some help getting people to help us get props and build props for the next play and things like that, because there's really a place for everybody. I mean, you know, because they need a lot of help. I mean, productions are big deals, and, you know, not everything's a big budget film.
We had a new principal in the school, and I was very fortunate to ask him if in the coming play, would he play the King of England in the final scene and reward the guy who'd saved the day? And he said, okay. But as a result, he came to enough rehearsals to see the complex choreography backstage with costumes and props and scene changes and lighting cues. And he sat down with the kids when I was giving notes. So he really understood that, as you say, the production is much more than what the audience takes in. There's a whole infrastructure behind it, which the actors depend on.
I mean,
you don't want to be making, I was going to say, those techies, and the techies are the ones who get the work.
Well, and
there are more jobs out there. Although my students, I don't care if they go on to, I don't care if my actors go on to Broadway or not. They will develop skills to speak in front of an audience, whether it's a eulogy or a board meeting or a sales meeting. I mean, those acting skills are pretty darn valuable ones to have.
Well,
I did take some students not too long ago to see a show at Arena Stage, one of the professional theaters in Washington, D.C. And one of my former students had a significant role in that show. And they had a discussion with the audience afterwards. And the kids, he came over to say hello to me, and the kids were all excited. And one of them was a little on the cocky side and said, "So what did Mr. Rome teach you when he was your teacher?" And this guy, and Nehal Joshi, keep going guy, said, "Work ethic." And I thought, I can live with that.
Isn't that great?
You know,
I mean,
we do work really hard to make it look so easy.
Yeah, and that's so true in life for so many things, you know. I mean, you work and work and work and work, and people go, "Oh, that looks so easy. I could do that too." Okay, let's see you start. Start here.
Yeah.
Anyway, sadly, we have come to the end of our time together. And how can people get hold of you? You know, is there anything that you are doing kind of on Zoom to help people, that people who aren't right where you are can kind of get a hand?
I am in the process. Yes, I'm in the process of developing an online coaching program specifically at helping people be fully prepared and know what to expect with auditions. And onlineactorcoaching.com will get them started there. They could learn more about me from educationalstages.com. That's not aimed so much at students as at theater educators. And my email would be chip.rome@educationalstages.com. So at this point, onlineactorcoaching.com will lead them to a free gift, a PDF I call The 8 Secrets to Getting Cast. So they can start.
Wow, that's pretty good. That's a great place to go start. Yeah, be sure to pick that up. And
so I'm putting those contacts in the chat if that helps you.
Well, we can definitely put that into the show notes, and we can definitely put that up into our after the fact descriptions and things. So we can definitely get people in touch, and let's just keep these theater skills going, because we all need them. You know, that's what I realized when I did this one little minute improv is we all have to be ready to act the part sometime, somehow. And it's tougher than you think.
But it's important to get a start, whether it's your doorway to stardom or not.
Exactly. Anyway, thanks very much. And yeah, we'll definitely, oops, where am I? There we are. One of my little things.